let me introduce you to our first speaker over there, David Damberger from Mkopa. David is the current strategy and data officer at Mkopa, overseeing international expansion, R&D labs, strategy, and data. He's been with the company since its launch in 2012 and has held several roles at Mkopa, including MD for Tanzania, Uganda, and Nigeria. Welcome, David. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So in your talk, you'll be sharing, and I'm very excited about your journey with Mkopa, and specifically how you've used the shared value business strategy to develop your business. David, I hand it over to you. The stage is yours.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the intro. So my name's David. I am Canadian by background, but I've spent most of my professional career in Africa. I'm based in Nairobi right now. With my family, as a lot of people at home, to address one of the most, I gave another talk earlier this week, and one of the questions was, are the barber shops on full lockdown in Nairobi right now? The answer is no, they're not, but this beard is my indulgence during COVID to sort of get away with something I've never done before, which is just to let my beard grow as long as I can before I guess I have to. My wife makes me shave it, so she's still being very patient with me right now, but I sort of have a COVID look. So as mentioned, I'm the Chief Strategy and Data Officer for Mkopa. I've been with the company since we started 8 years ago now, so I've been there for the whole journey. And today I'm going to share a little bit about the stories of Mkopa. I do strategy and data right now, so a lot of statistics, but also a lot of stories. This presentation, I'll do a little statistics, but then a lot more stories. So let me share my screen here. Oops. All right, just getting everything set up here. Yes, we can see. Okay, great. Okay, so a little bit about Mkopa first. If you don't know anything about us, we are some stats, and these stats are a little bit outdated, but because I just had the slide from a few months ago, but we're 8 years old. We're actually based in Nairobi. Our head office is here. Since we launched, we've connected now well over 850,000 homes. As I get close to 1 million homes now after we've had a really strong first quarter. We have about 1 million products that we've sold, which I'll talk about in a second. So we've got close to 1,000 full-time staff across 6 countries, with Nairobi being the head office, and then Uganda, Tanzania, Nigeria, and then we have a few staff in the UK and a few in Hong Kong. We've also had a partner who sold in Ghana and in Ivory Coast, so we're beyond East Africa and we're in West Africa right now. We've got well over 3,000 active sales agents who sell on our behalf. That number is probably closer to 3,500 now, 100 plus retail points. And then last year we were EBITDA positive, which was a big jump for us to get to that profitability curve and sort of our shared value journey. That's some simple stats. One of the things to know about us is we really rely on digital payments, and we are one of the world's top mobile payment receivers. And so we actually receive a payment from a customer every second. And so if you think about mobile payments in the world and how frequent they are, we have grown quite substantially, and we receive those payments every few seconds. From a shared value approach, we were named one of the top companies in the world, 50 companies world changing the world. What was interesting, and this is 2015, but M-Pesa in Kenya was named #1 through sort of Safaricom, but we were on that list as well, which was quite exciting for us. And our shared value impact, which I'll go into a lot more detail and tell a lot of stories on, is very broad. So our business model, which I'll explain in a second, though, allows us to both reduce poverty by improving people's savings. We improve health by reducing people's inhalation of kerosene fumes. We support education by a lot of our customers can't read and study at night, and so we improve schooling and studying and a lot of education. We provide affordable clean energy through solar energy. We provide a lot of work and economic growth. We've created, thousands of jobs through a lot of our work. We do some of our own manufacturing as well, and different types of jobs. We have Salesforce and obviously all the employees, plus a number of our customers set up their own businesses. A lot of our customers are small businesses. We have a lot of innovation, which I'll talk about in Africa, developed a lot of it in Africa. A lot of e-waste and for recycling and responsible consumption. We recycle a lot of our batteries and reuse them. And we reduce a moderate amount of CO2 relative to, I guess, what is done. So those are just some statistics, but I'll dive into some stories now, and I'll try and run through some of these fast. So we have time for some conversation, some questions and conversation. I'm assuming, based on the poll, a lot of people on this call and in this conference understand a lot of the problems in Africa. So obviously, electricity is one of the big ones. 1 billion people globally without it. 600 million in Africa. This is a picture of Africa at night, which is a good example of it. How do people deal with that? I think a lot of people are probably familiar, but kerosene, candles, wood fires, and is what people use, or battery torches. We have to buy batteries all the time to solve their electricity problems right now, and they're spending quite a bit of money on this bad energy. And so, depending on the country you're in, but here in Kenya, 40 to 50 US cents a day people are spending on this bad energy is sort of one of the major problems. The other problem, though, that probably wasn't talked about a lot and relates to why did our business model start to work, is that solar's been around in Africa for a long time, a lot more than 10 years, but it really wasn't taking off. And one of the reasons solar wasn't taking off is it's expensive. So yeah, you have this neat picture here of this person with all these solar panels, but these solar panels are really expensive. And then it's not just the solar panels that were expensive, but the batteries to connect to them were expensive, and all the connections. And so solar really hadn't taken off in a lot of areas in Africa, especially for the consumer. And then the second problem with the business model is financing. And so you said, well, if it's expensive, why wasn't it financed? Well, there was microfinances, and there has been microfinance for quite a while in Africa as well, financing solar power, but that really didn't take off either in the early 2000s. And so our business model tries to solve that problem of we obviously clean energy is available, but it's expensive. Well, why weren't microfinance institutions able to solve that? And usually if you talk to microfinance institutions, one of the biggest challenges was collecting payments. And so you can finance solar panels to poor people, but how you collect those payments of these microfinance models where people are going out into villages and having to collect every week, how do you get people to pay, was a large challenge for them. And so our business model tried to address those challenges. So the story of Mkopa actually starts before our business starts. It actually starts with the story of M-Pesa. And I'm going to assume most people here know M-Pesa. It's quite famous with one of the world's largest mobile money providers. It was one of the largest for a while. It is a way for people who didn't have access to banking services, and it started in 2007 to start to get access to digital financial services on their phone. And so M-Pesa is basically a mobile money service that has grown to now, I think, be over half, or maybe it's 2/3 of Kenya's GDP is now transferred on the mobile phone equivalent. And it starts with this man, not very famous in the world, but his name is Nick Hughes. And he is actually the founder of M-Pesa. He was working with Vodacom Group in the UK on an innovation project, and him and a few other people started this idea of, it wasn't even mobile payments, it was paying microfinances using your phone, and that didn't work, and it actually turned into this great mobile money system. It's a great story that I won't tell here. But Nick started M-Pesa with a few other people, and it was started in Kenya at Safaricom, and it just ballooned. It took off, and it has enabled so much, and I'll assume people here know that story. But after he started M-Pesa, he worked with Vodacom for a long time, but then decided, well, there's so much more. It is a platform to enable so much more. What else can you do when you have an economy that's running on mobile money? And so he is the original founder of Mkopa, and with two other founders started the idea of Mkopa. Also interesting enough, he's the only, if you go back to the slide on companies changing the world, he's the only person who has two companies he's founded that were on this list. That's more than Elon Musk, that's more than Steve Jobs. And so his name usually isn't thrown around with those people's names, but if you think about people changing the world, Nick is probably one of the unsung heroes of that. So Nick was thinking about what other ideas, can you get going in an economy when you have digital money taking off? And one of the interesting ideas is around financing. And there's a really interesting story that we've learned as a company that really defines, I guess, why our business model works. And that's if you go to a customer and you say, hey, we can sell you a solar panel and lights and a battery financed, how much can you afford? And you'll ask that customer and you'll say, well, can you afford $15 a month? And most people will say, no, $15 a month is too much. You say, okay, well, can you afford maybe $3, $4 a week? No, I can't really afford $3, $4 a week. Well, can you afford 50 cents per day? 40 or 50 Kenya shillings per day in Kenya. And the customers, they switch. They say, yes, I can. Even though that is the exact same amount of money, if you aggregate it up, the real kind of insight is that if you start to understand cash flow cycles of people who are poor in rural areas, especially, they think very much day to day. Maybe sometimes week to week, but a lot of their planning is only day to day. And so trying to understand this concept of $15 a month just seems so much, it's so expensive, and they can't save, and how much, but 50 cents a day, yeah, that's what I spend on kerosene. That's what I spend on batteries. That's what I spend to travel to town to charge my mobile phone already. So that was one of the really, really interesting insights. And there's a good quote from President Obama, who visited us in 2015 and sort of heard about the model and said, hey, this is really, really exciting. And so that's where we really anchored a lot of our business model around that story and around that idea that that customers think about their cash flow in a daily way. And so where a lot of financial institutions have, banks and microfinances, you pay back monthly or pay back weekly. I think one of our innovations was like, how do you get to pay daily? And if you create a daily payment, that might make it a lot easier for people to afford. The second concept was, again, how do you get people to invest? And so our product, we priced it around 40, 50 cents a day for the basic solar system, but we also, it's a credit product. And so people have to pay something up front to get it. So what's the down payment? And usually, again, another one of the reasons people can access finance with banks and regular financial institutions, they don't have collateral. They don't have, some way to say, I don't have a credit rating. They don't have other money. A lot of the time, they don't have any like house lease or anything that they can use, any assets that they can collateralize. And so the next thing we were trying to discover when we were first starting the business, like, well, people have to put something down. They have to kind of say, if this is a finance, you have to put something down, because we have to know whether somebody's going to be creditworthy or not. Even, a lot of people in the poor, will say that poor people are not creditworthy at all, and that's why they don't have access to banks and to microfinance institutions. Our hypothesis is actually there is a lot of people who are creditworthy and can afford to pay back 50 cents a day, but you still have to filter out the ones who can and can't. And so one of the interesting ideas were like, people have to give up something. And one of the initial ideas was, well, if people don't have assets, or what can they give up? And we had this interesting idea of a goat. And like a goat is like it's not like giving away a cow. Cows are really expensive or something, one of the biggest things. But a goat, maybe, a few chickens, that's like, really a lot for quite a few people, but it's not so much. And so this idea of like, we started to test out like, well, if people don't have enough money to pay the down payment, are they willing to sell a goat? Which was one of the interesting things. And we started to see that people, for a solar system to can power their house and save them 50 cents a day on kerosene and batteries, hey, like I'll give you a goat for that. And so we had this thing where you could trade in a goat in the early days, and I got a few people to do it, which was quite fun to do. So that's another story that sort of talks about the concept we learned in our business model. The next was technology, and so there's this thing called Internet of Things. I'm sure a lot of people are aware of the concept. Some people, technical people, call it machine to machine. But what this is this idea of having a SIM card, and obviously everyone has a SIM card in their phone already. But there's a question of like, well, if you're able to put a SIM card in machines, then you can connect those machines together and to the internet. And so this was one of the ideas and original concepts of Mkopa. Well, how to use this technology, this machine-to-machine Internet of Things technology, basically a SIM card in a device, to help out. And this is one of those key innovations that really made things work for Mkopa. So, getting people to pay through a combination of M-Pesa and figuring out, they can afford 50 cents a day and be able to pay a down payment using a goat. That was all the financial part of Mkopa. So that was a great way to make people pay, or to enable them to pay. But if somebody doesn't pay, how do you stop them? And one of the challenges that microfinance had is you have to go out to the villages, you have to like knock on people's doors, and it was really hard to collect back, when people weren't paying, and obviously they weren't home, or it was hard to get a hold of them. It was very expensive. Well, so the next innovation was, well, if you put a SIM card inside the solar system, and specifically like the battery box, and you can control that battery by turning it on and off, that enabled us to basically not have to go visit customers, because how we did is if the customer did pay us, we could turn on the device. And then if the customer didn't pay us, we could turn off the device. And so the concept, maybe the equivalent in a more wealthy context, is if your bank and your power company got together and gave you a big loan for a car and said, if you don't pay back your car, we'll turn off the power to your house. That's the broad idea. And so we did the same thing where customers can now pay us using micropayments on mobile money, 50 cents a day. And every day they pay us, we can now turn on their solar system. And if they don't pay us, we can turn it off. And that has really turned into the way that it gets the people to be able to pay back their devices, and sort of the basis of Mkopa's model. Now, the nice thing about the way we deal with it, though, is unlike banks and microfinance institutions, if people don't pay, usually you don't pay off your loan, there's a penalty, a large penalty, or you default, you get a bad credit rating. For Mkopa, if you don't pay for a few days, it doesn't matter. Like, your power doesn't turn on, but we don't penalize you. You can sort of, that's the pay-as-you-go idea. And so if you can't afford power this week, no problem. You don't get power, obviously, but you don't have to pay us. And so what that does is we don't trap people into debt cycles. We don't get into this problem where you have this huge problem. You take a big loan and all of a sudden you can't afford it and it becomes too much for you. You can just kind of sit and wait till you get money and in the bank, and then when you can start paying off your loan again slowly as you go. And so that's the very broad concept from Coppa. You can also return the device and get your deposit back get your goat back in another sense. Is another way to make this sort of a friendly way for people to pay back loans. So this combination of the Internet of Things, mobile payments, and sort of breaking into micropayments has really enabled the business model where we can we look like a solar company, but we're really a financing company that helps finance electronic assets to customers. And so let me jump to this slide. So what that enabled us to do is to create a whole bunch of products for customers. So our first product was a solar panel with a battery box, some lights, a torch, and a radio. And that's where we started selling. The original product actually didn't have torches and radios. But then we were able to grow to TVs. And so people could then buy TVs, solar-powered TVs. And then we started to go to a starter as a refurbished product, where we refurbished the old batteries to create a more cheap, affordable product. We've then moved on to refrigerators, to acquisition products for customers. So that's the first part of our business model, is you can pay us 50 cents a day for the solar system, or 85 cents a day for the small TV, or $1 a day for the big TV. And you pay that over the course of 1 year, 2 years. That's the financial product. After that time, you own that product. So that's the other kind of innovation we've had, is this ownership concept. People don't want a perpetual lease, like I pay my electricity bills right now. I don't want to do that. Most people want to pay for some time and then own it. It's theirs. Then you're not paying anymore, and the sun is free. And so therefore, you're not paying, and you start saving money. So the next part of Mkopa's model is, once people have paid off their first product, or let's say over the first year, then we actually have a credit rating for them that they've never had before, because we know they can pay 50 cents a day. We know they can afford it. We now also have a collateralized asset in their house, which is a device that we can turn off and on. So what that allows us to do then is, once they're finished paying off the first device, they could say, okay, I'm going to leave now and save money. But I would say, well, what else do you want? What other ways can you upgrade your life? That's our slogan. And so it's like, well, because we can offer you a clean cook stove. We can offer you a water tank. We can offer you a smartphone. We can offer you cash loans. We can offer you chickens. And we can't turn off the chickens, unfortunately. But what we can do is, if you stop paying for your chickens, we can turn off your original system. And so that's how it works. And so our vision for people is, don't just pay us 50 cents a day for 1 year. It's pay us 50 cents a day for the next 10 years, which you already can afford. So just get rid of your kerosene. And for the next 10 years, whatever you would have spent on kerosene, pay us. And then we will upgrade your home. You'll start off with lights, then you'll have a torch, then a radio, then you'll have a TV, then you'll have a refrigerator, then you'll get a water tank, then you'll get a cash loan to pay your kids' school fees, and on and on and on. And that's sort of the idea, is we take people where they are, what they can afford, and start to give them more assets to improve their life. So that's the business model that we have, and that's what's working really well. And that's where, when we say we've made, maybe 900,000 original sales, but we've got, I think, 1.3 million sales, because we've had 400,000 of those original, almost half of our original customers upgrading and buying more and more products over time. So that's where we are. Now where we're moving towards this is, now we don't even need to do just solar. We just need to do electronic assets. And so now we're doing grid, so you don't need to be just an off-grid customer. So now we're doing smartphones. So we're selling pay-as-you-go smartphones, not a solar smartphone, just a smartphone. If you don't pay for the smartphone, it turns off. And we're doing the same for just regular televisions, and soon we'll do it for refrigerators. So that's the model that we're working. A few quick stories here. I only have about 15 minutes left, so I'll tell a few quick stories on the journey and why. One of them is this energy efficiency story. And a lot of people talk about the price of solar panels coming down, which has enabled the sector. That's true, but it's some battery has come down, which has helped. But the biggest innovation in technology that's helped us scale is this idea of energy efficiency and appliances. And a lot of companies should say, oh, we should have energy efficient appliances. We have a 48-watt TV, and this used to be 150 watts. Or we down to 24 watts. Well, when we started, the 24-watt TV to most people's eyes was amazing. That's so efficient. But to us, that was still really a lot of power, and we had to use a giant battery and a giant panel to power it. But what happened a few years ago is, actually a few engineers just spent a little bit of time trying to innovate and get that 24 down to a lower number. And they were able very quickly to crack it from 24 to 8 watts. And what that did is that, that's a third of the power consumption of the TV. That means we could have a third less the size of the battery, a third less the size of the panel. That drastically changed our industry. And so this innovation around energy efficiency, not a lot of people are putting energy into it or time and effort into it. And when they do, though, we're seeing these drastic changes. And so we've just done the same with the refrigerator. And so we've just won an award of one of the most efficient refrigerators in the world. And now, by spending a bit of energy in our research and development trying to get that power consumption down, you really shrink the size of the panel and the battery, and therefore the cost for customers, and therefore make it much more affordable. Yeah, I've talked about phones. So that's another innovation. So again, it's not about solar. It's about just being able to this pay-as-you-go model. So pay-as-you-go for a phone. So pay 60 shillings a day for a Samsung Galaxy A10s is a new offer that we have right now. So then that's one of the innovations. An innovation around our Salesforce. So we have one of the big lessons we learned was that a new idea, new innovation model. We thought the original idea was, okay, we'll just create a whole bunch of sales points, which is what telecoms and banks do, and advertise a lot. That didn't work. That's called a pull sales model. But what we learned is that with something new, this sort of new concept of pay-as-you-go and solar was hard for people to understand. And so we really had to build a push model. And that was a Salesforce that is out there knocking on people's doors and teaching them about this product. And that's been one of the hardest parts of our journey so far, to be able to build a Salesforce that is out there pushing day to day, and been one of the big kind of stories for us. A few more things. Intelligence. So data is really important to us. We're really honored to be called one of the smartest companies in the world from MIT. And actually, we were listed as the smartest company in Africa, because I think it was us and Jumi were the two questions on that, which was really cool. Satya Nadella of Microsoft, who's the CEO of Microsoft, came in and really talked about our ingenious idea. We don't believe we're the smartest company in Africa. We feel we still do a lot of dumb things, but we want to be the smartest company in Africa. So that's a vision for us as a company, but there's so much with data right now, and there's so much in that world that is really helpful. The impact, I'll wrap up on impact. So a lot of statistics on our impact, millions of people benefiting, a lot of income generation, a lot of jobs created, CO2 removed. TV impact, I think, has been an interesting one to explore, but the number of people who during the 2017 election in Kenya said, I think it was like 60% of our customers said, this is the first time I've ever seen a televised debate. I've never seen a debate before, which was fascinating and amazing that people can engage in the political world now that they have a TV. Now with COVID, kids are learning on the television, because Kenya has put their education on the television, so a way for people to learn. So the power of a television or a phone and lights has been quite big. But the real story, I think, that gets me is the impact this has on the next generation of growing up with electricity. And this is Joseph Jr. here, who I actually stayed overnight with, as one of the people I was trying to understand the impact of. And it was really interesting because before he had solar power, he was not able to study at night. He had kerosene, but his family couldn't afford much of it, and it was really smoky, and he's really had health problems because of breathing in the kerosene. But once they got solar panel, he started studying more at night, and this was in Tanzania, actually. And he was actually, the school found out that he's actually extremely bright, and he'd never studied before. But once he was able to study, he actually ended up skipping a class in like a whole age group in school because he was so bright, and now they're accelerating him into scholarship programs because to get to better schools because he's so bright. But that wasn't really showing up before until he was able to access the lights here. Yeah, so anyways, those are just a couple stories. I know it's a bit rushed, but I know they want to, let's put questions right now. So yeah, so I'll now open it up to questions. I have to click the Q&A box. 1 second here.
David, I love that young Tanzanian boy's story. That's exactly, the African hope and the African dream and what we call here in South Africa, Ubuntu, where you just see people rising to the full potential through nothing. And also what I picked up from you, sorry, there we go. Also what I picked up from you, and I know there's so many Q&A questions on board, is the push Salesforce. I know it's a hard concept and something really hard to deliver, but knocking door to door, the fact that Mkopa is a solar finance company and it's about ownership and life improvement. Those are my takeaway points. I don't want to waste any more time. We've got so many Q&A questions, but let's cross over to the poll I see that we've got here. Are you ready, David?
I'm ready.
Okay. let's cross over to the poll. So the question is, to be successful with launching your own pay-go business model, which of the following do you think is most important requirement? Access to large quantities of working capital, a strong management information system, strong and hands-on sales distribution, a senior and experienced management team. Let's submit your answers. And then David, you can tell us your thoughts.
It's a hard question.
And of course, we've got Q&A, and I love the fact that there's so many questions out there for you, David, as you can see, and we'll just take a couple of those. But thank you so much for your insights and for the work that you're doing across the globe.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe I'll answer a few questions if people are answering the poll.
Yes.
So that's you want a standalone solar system for productive use. So one of the tricky things about the pay-as-you-go business model is the appliances have to be tied to the solar system. So we can't just give you a solar, we can give you a solar system, but like the whole thing that worked for us is using that 8-watt TV. Because most people, we're trying to figure out this for Nigeria, they'll have 100 or 150 watt TVs. Well, to power that, people use big generators in Lagos right now and all over Nigeria. To do that with solar, you just need huge panels and huge batteries, and it's way too expensive. And so it's not just about providing power. That's one of the key things. It's really about the appliances. So you have to really work on the TVs and the refrigerators and lights to get the power to come down to make it so it's affordable to have a small solar panel and small solar battery. And so therefore you have to tie those things together, which is very important. But productive use is something we're working on. So refrigerator is one of our first productive use appliances. Really trying to get, especially for women, it's really important for their household to be able to reduce the amount of time they spend shopping, can keep products refrigerated, and a lot of small business owners being able to make business by selling cold drinks and things and refrigerators. But we really want to push the industry to innovate more in productive appliances, because once you spend some time, maybe an electric grinding mill, we looked a lot with irrigation pumps. Like if people can get the power consumption of those appliances down, that's really going to spur innovation and allow these appliances to take off and be productive for people. So that's a really big lesson for us, and I want to push other people to innovate in those areas. We would love somebody to just go off and build the most, energy efficient solar irrigation pump right now, and I think that would just fundamentally change Africa. So we want, we have a group called Mkopa Labs that somebody knows here about. I actually run that team, and we try and innovate in these areas, but we look at other people as well to help innovate and push. So now Philips helps us with our light bulbs, and they are innovating. This company out of Brazil underneath Whirlpool Group was helping us with the refrigerator. So we need partnerships to help us to innovate those appliances.
Great ideas. Thank you. Let's look at our poll results. Can you unpack those for us, please, David?
Yeah, so I think everyone can see it. So the voting of the top is a strong management information system, 41%. The second one is strong and hands-on sales and distribution. Third is access to large quantities of working capital. And the last is the senior experienced management team. I voted not for what everyone else thought. I said the senior and experienced management team. And listen, all four of these things are fundamentally, they're really, really important for our business model, and you can't do one with the other. And so, but for me, it's like you have to have really good people, and you have to have people who know how to execute on the ground. And people who have built businesses in Africa has been super important for us. So I won't try and badmouth our competitors too much, but some of our competitors had head offices in California or in London. Well, our head office is in Kenya, and we hired people who have built companies in Africa. And I think, strategy and tech is really important, and financing, you need that, but you can't get that unless you do operations in Africa. And anyone who's done it knows it's really hard. And so it's all about the ground game and execution in my mind, and the companies that succeed here are the ones that know how to do that. And so you got to spend a ton of time with customers in the field and trying to just understand where things are at and just dealing with all the challenges, because obviously lack of infrastructure is one of the biggest challenges. And so you have to find solutions around that.
David, could you also
obviously we need working capital, we need a good IT system, we need sales and distribution. Those are like our CFO, our CTO, and our sales chief commercial officer would hit me right now because no, sales is the hardest thing, or no, financing is the hardest thing, or that tech is the hardest. And we've struggled. All three of those things have been challenges for us. So definitely all those things are important. And that's part of it. Is part of our story is we had to vertically integrate. We didn't choose to. Our strategy was never to vertically integrate and do all of these things, but we were forced to because of lack of partnerships and lack of infrastructure. And so a story for us, another is the strategy of focus and do the one thing you're good at maybe makes sense in business school, but for us, it's like you have to just hustle, right? You got to figure it out. You got to do what you can do, and hopefully, when you get big enough, now that we're big enough, we're starting to outsource a little bit more, but that took us a lot of effort. And so you need good people who are dynamic and who can operate on the ground to figure that stuff out.
I want to hear more from you. I want to hear your insights on the next two questions. You choose the next two questions, David.
Okay, there's so many. So I'll type the answers to other ones afterwards for the other people. Let's see here. There's so many. Some of these are technical. I'm trying to get broad ones. Have you plans to take Mkopa to the rest of the region? Yes, continents. We're trying. The biggest blocker for us is mobile money and digital payments. So our business model doesn't work without it. And so we've just gone into Nigeria where it's not even mobile money's taken off, but more digital payments through banking. But we really are following the mobile money sector. And the reason we've mainly in East Africa is because mobile money's worked so well. And so the more people can push mobile money, and we're really excited about hearing it starting to grow in a bunch of other countries, but that is definitely an enabler for us. But we want to go beyond the continent, and even to Asia. There's a lot of, in Myanmar and India, there's a lot of room because a lot of people don't have electricity. So this model can work in all those areas, but mobile money is just so important. So that's one of the ones that I think is really important for how we want to scale. The biggest challenge in Mkopa's history is the next. I'll kind of end on that. Is the biggest challenge. Yeah. I think, oh man, we had a really tough time. It's a long story, but 3 years ago, we were getting a lot of financing to help grow, and we were growing pretty fast, but we were supposed to triple in growth, and I think we only doubled in growth. And all of a sudden, our financier said, no, like if you're not going to grow that fast, you have to become profitable. And we had to make this huge pivot from growth to profitability, and that mean we had to cut a bunch of people. And so we had a really dark time in our company's history where we actually had to lay off about 20% of the staff. It was in the news. It was the worst 6 months of my entire professional life, and so hard. That was the hardest challenge we've had to deal with. But now, as you've seen, I think on the first slide, we're now EBITDA positive. So we were able to make that pivot and turn and become profitable, but that was really hard for us. And went through a lot of challenges and pain, and obviously the people who got laid off, that was really hard on them. So that was by far our biggest challenge. But now we're seeing the light on the other side, and we're coming out of it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, David. Once again, you reminded us to be an entrepreneur, you have to have resilience, and some things you can never learn in business school. Thank you so much, David. And that was David Dambager, Chief Strategy and Data Officer and Head of International Expansion, Mkopa. Thank you so much for your insights, and keep up that positive energy and the great innovative work that you're doing on our continent.